Have you ever been stuck trying to make a decision? Maybe fixing something that's broken or launching a new feature. You think about the effort, the cost to do it, right?
hmm
But how often do you really consider the cost of not doing it? That sort of invisible cost of just waiting.
Yeah, that waiting period, the delay, it's almost never free, is it? There are always consequences, and often you can actually measure them.
Absolutely. And that hidden cost, that's exactly what we're plunging into today. We're talking about understanding and quantifying the value you lose by delaying action. It's a concept called cost of delay analysis.
Right. And for this deep dive, we've looked at a whole stack of sources a listener sent over. It's a really interesting mix. Academic papers, industry articles, even a detailed thesis looking at how the U.S. Air Force uses it. Pretty specific stuff.
So our mission today, take all that material, pull out the core ideas. We want to unpack what cost of delay really means, how it works, in the real world, and explore why it's particularly challenging but also super valuable in places like the public sector or, say, complex software projects. Basically, pull out the key takeaways for you. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's start with the basics, the fundamental idea. Cost of delay. At its heart, it's about putting a number on the future opportunity costs. The costs you rack up by postponing a decision or delaying a project launch or even just slowing down its completion.
Okay, so it's not just the project budget, like the money you spend to build the thing.
No, not just that.
It's the value you would have gotten if you'd finished sooner that you're now missing out on.
That's exactly it. It's the value you could have been getting from the finished product being out there or the decision being made for that period of time. That value is lost because of the delay.
Where did this way of thinking come from? Did it start somewhere specific?
It definitely has strong roots in the private sector. I mean, that makes sense, right? Focus on the bottom line. One source we looked at mentions companies like Maersk Line, the huge shipping company.
Yeah, container ships everywhere.
Right. They were apparently pioneers here. They realized that value wasn't just about, say, increasing revenue. It could also mean protecting the revenue you already have or reducing your operating costs or even, actively avoiding costs down the line.
That's a really key shift in thinking, isn't it? Value isn't just making more money.
It really is. And they actually developed specific methods to handle this, like a metric they called cost of delay divided by duration, CD3 for short.
UT3, okay.
Yeah, it helped them prioritize. They had tons of work, obviously. This helped them see which tasks gave the most value compared to how long they'd take.
Cost of delay divided by duration, CD3.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense for prioritizing, actually. You want the biggest impact in the shortest time.
Exactly.
And the sources also mentioned that this cost of delay, it doesn't always just creep up steadily. The way it changes over time can be quite different depending on the situation.
Yes, absolutely. That's where understanding the different COD curves, as one source calls them, comes in handy. It helps you sort of categorize the urgency and the potential impact. The simplest one is the standard curve. That's where the cost of delay just grows linearly over time. Pretty straightforward, easy to calculate.
Like a dripping tap, just steadily losing value.
Sort of like that, yeah. Then you've got the urgent curve. Now here, the cost is high right from the get-go, and it shoots up fast. Think about like a competitor launching a game-changing product. Every single day you wait to respond, that opportunity cost is just rocketing upwards.
Right, okay. That's like a fire alarm going off. What about things tied to specific dates?
That would be the fixed date curve. For these kinds of things, the cost of delay is basically zero. Until you hit a specific deadline, you absolutely cannot miss. Could be a change in the law, a big marketing campaign launch, a conference maybe. If you miss that date, the cost doesn't just tick up, it often jumps, like massively. It could make the whole project worthless or incredibly expensive to fix.
Oof, so hitting that date is absolutely everything.
Pretty much. And then finally, there's the intangible curve. This is for your low priority stuff. Things with minimal immediate impact. The cost of delay is low, maybe even flat. Putting it off doesn't really hurt the organization much.
It can wait. Simple as that.
Basically, yeah. Now, there's also a specific calculation people sometimes use within this COD framework, especially, in sales or manufacturing. It's called the lost month cost. It tries to quantify the potential cost you face during a peak period, like your busiest sales month.
How do they work that out?
Well, often it's calculated by taking the expected peak sales volume for that month and multiplying it by the product's profit margin. The idea is to really highlight how much opportunity cost you're facing if you don't have your product ready, or maybe a process isn't optimized during those absolutely critical high-demand times. Makes you think twice about delaying into peak season, right?
Yeah, that really puts a spotlight on the seasonal impact. Makes it very visible. Now, one of the sources also had a non-military example from a manufacturer, right? Illustrating similar ideas, but maybe using different terms.
Yes, that's right. They didn't necessarily call it cost of delay, but they were definitely focused on managing costs related to time and efficiency. They used what the source called cost contrast techniques. Specifically, they focused on standardizing processes and using continuous monitoring, especially across their supply chain and internal operations.
And what was the result? What did that do for them?
Well, by standardizing things, they got more consistency, better quality, more predictable output. And that cut down on cost variations you get from like rework or defects. And the continuous monitoring things like regular checks, real-time data, let them catch problems, quality issues, bottlenecks much, much earlier.
So they were basically preventing the cost of delay that comes from bad quality or holdups by being proactive.
Exactly. It cut rework costs, boosted overall efficiency, and helped them spot potential cost overruns before they got out of hand. So yeah, while maybe not using the exact COD calculation framework we've been discussing, it's definitely embodying that core principle. Understand and tackle the costs that come with delays, errors, or things just not running smoothly.
Okay, so we see how this COD thinking works in the business world, where profit and efficiency are key drivers. But what happens when you try to apply that to somewhere totally different, like the Department of Defense? I mean, their mission isn't making money.
Right, and this is where the sources, especially that Air Force thesis, get really interesting. Because you're absolutely right, trying to directly paste a commercial COD model onto a public sector entity like the DoD, it's really, really tricky. The core motivation is just fundamentally different. You can't measure success in dollars and cents or market share.
So you have to completely redefine value.
Precisely. In the DoD world, value is tied directly to their unique mission, which is providing military readiness. And that covers everything they need: personnel, equipment, logistics, and increasingly really effective software systems.
Yeah, software is readiness these days, isn't it, in a modern military context?
It absolutely is. And this is a big deal. The sources point out that the DoD has historically used older, sometimes like decades old, methods for building software, waterfall, that kind of thing. But there's a real push now, backed up by research like this AFIT thesis, to adopt modern agile methods.
Agile, meaning faster, more iterative development cycles.
Exactly. And you see places like Kessel Run in the Air Force popping up. These are basically software factories using agile. The AFIT research actually digs into creating a COD framework specifically for this kind of environment, public sector, Air Force, using agile. It tries to solve that core problem, adapting a profit-driven idea to a mission-driven world.
Okay, let's dig into Kessel Run then. What kind of work are they actually doing where this COD analysis becomes useful?
So Kessel Run's job is basically to modernize Air Force software using these agile practices. They build applications like the ones in what they call the Kratos portfolio, and these are designed to replace older legacy systems. A really big example mentioned is replacing the Theater Battle Management Core System, or TBMCS.
TBMCS.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty important.
Oh, it is. It's like a core system for air command and control. So replacing something that huge and complex with new agile-built applications like Kratos, that's a massive undertaking. And as the sources show, delaying that full replacement, well, it has a very real cost of delay, even if you're not measuring profit.
Can they actually put a number on that? Quantify it?
They can, at least partially. The sources give a specific example. They calculated a part of the cost of delay for the time lag in fully switching from TBMCS to Kratos, and they focus on the ongoing cost of just keeping the old TBMCS contract running.
So the cost of not being able to turn off the old system because the new one isn't fully ready yet.
Exactly that. The source states the TBMCS contract costs about $16.54 million a year. If you break that down, it's roughly $1.378 million every single month. That monthly bill just keeps coming for every month that Kratos isn't fully operational and ready to take over all of TBMCS's functions.
Wow. Okay. $1.378 million a month. That's not the cost of building Kratos itself. That's the quantifiable cost of delay just from the wait. That really puts the financial side of delaying into sharp focus. even in a government context.
It really does. It shows a big tangible cost ticking up every month the modernization isn't finished. Now, beyond these huge system replacements, Credute is also used within the agile development process itself, especially for prioritizing features in a team's backlog, the list of things they need to build.
How does it help with prioritizing smaller things, like individual features?
It gives them a quantitative way to look at it. So for each potential feature or maybe a bug fix on their list, the teams try to estimate two things. Its value, which might be, operational impact, maybe time saved for the users, or even direct cost savings and its estimated duration, basically how long it'll take to build. Then, by calculating a cost of delay score, often its value per unit of time, you get a number. And that number helps compare different items more objectively.
Okay, let's look at the specifics. The sources had data from Kessel Run's Jigsaw and Chainsaw teams, right? How do they use this in practice?
Okay, yeah, let's break down a couple of those examples. So for the Jigsaw team, they had feature one. They estimated its value was equivalent to saving about $23,712 per year. That works out to roughly $456 per week, and they figured it would take about 3 weeks to complete. So its code score value per week divided by duration is $456 divided by 3. That gives a score of 152.
Got it. So $152 of value opportunity lost for every week they delay that specific feature relative to how long it takes to build. Okay.
Exactly. Then Jigsaw had feature two. This was a bug fix, actually. It saved people time they were spending on rework. Its value was estimated a bit higher, $25,128.58 per year, or about $483.24 per week. It also had a 3-week estimate. So the COD score is $483.24 divided by 3, which comes out to about 161.08. So slightly higher value per week than feature one.
Okay. Similar effort, slightly higher weekly value. Now, what about the Chainsaw team?
Right, Chainsaw, they had feature one estimated to save $14,300 a year, so $275 per week. But here's the key difference. They estimated it would only take 1 week to complete. So its COD score is $275 divided by 1, which is just $275.
Whoa. Okay, look at that difference. Even though the total yearly saving is less than the Jigsaw features because they can deliver it so much faster, its cost of delay score is way higher in this little comparison, 275 versus 152 or 161. That really shows the power of this calculation, doesn't it? It highlights those quick wins.
It totally changes how you look at prioritization, yeah.
And just to round it out, Chainsaw also had feature 2, another bug fix, this one related to processing time. Estimated savings were much lower, $1,290.34 per year, or about $24.81 per week. Also a 1-week estimate, so its COD score is $24.81.
Okay, so comparing all those scores. Jigsaw 1 at 152, Jigsaw 2 at 161, Chainsaw 1 way up at 275, and Chainsaw 2 down at 24.81. You can clearly see, even with the small sample, while that second Chainsaw bug fix is low priority based on this score, Chainsaw Feature 1's high score of 275 just screams, do this one now, even though its total yearly saving isn't the biggest.
That's the key takeaway from looking at data like this. It shows how putting a number on the value per unit of time it takes to deliver gives you a clear, pretty objective way to prioritize. It reveals that delaying those seemingly smaller, faster fixes can actually be costing you more per week than delaying a bigger, slower project.
This quantitative approach feels really powerful. But like we said earlier, military readiness isn't just about saving money or hours. How do they balance COD with, the actual mission? That's a super important point, and the sources really emphasize this. In the DoD context, where you have these mission-critical factors, warfighter safety, strategic advantage, national security, things that are really hard, maybe impossible to put a dollar value on, DAB-8 analysis is explicitly recommended as a supplemental tool. It's an input, but not the whole story.
Right. Not the only factor in the decision.
Exactly. It gives you valuable data on the financial cost or the efficiency cost of delay, but it can't and it shouldn't override essential mission needs or the kind of subjective expert judgment you need for readiness decisions. The warfighter's needs have to come first.
So it informs the decision makers. It doesn't make the decision for them.
Precisely. And speaking of informing decisions, the second part of that AFIT research actually looked into the whole process of estimating software costs in these Air Force Agile setups, because obviously getting those duration estimates right is pretty fundamental if you want to calculate meaningful COD scores.
Right. Garbage in, garbage out. So what did they find? How are these Air Force teams actually estimating their work?
Well, they compared what the academic literature says about estimation practices with what was really happening on the ground in the Air Force software factories. And it was interesting that academic papers tend to focus on like database techniques, sophisticated stuff, neural networks, that kind of thing.
Very algorithmic, data-driven.
Yeah, but when they surveyed the actual Air Force factories, they found a strong preference for more human-centric or experience-based methods. Things like non-algorithmic techniques, planning poker, relying on expert judgment, and also capacity-based estimating, looking at what the team can actually handle.
So less black box algorithms, more teams sitting down using their collective experience, figuring out what they can realistically achieve.
Pretty much, the research found a statistically significant difference there. A much stronger reliance on those non-algorithmic styles in practice in the Air Force compared to what the academic literature was emphasizing. Oh, and another interesting finding. The Air Force factories really try to avoid using SLOC source lines of code for agile estimation. Even though it's a traditional metric and sometimes still shows up in contracts, they found it just wasn't helpful or accurate for how they work in agile.
That's quite a gap between theory and practice, isn't it? And it really speaks to the specific challenges of estimating in these complex real-world environments. Which kind of brings us back to another point raised in the sources about the trade-offs you always face in any project.
Right, that classic dilemma. Is it quality versus speed? Or quality versus hitting a deadline?
Yeah, if hitting the deadline means you have to cut corners on quality, is that worth it?
And the answer, frustratingly perhaps, is almost always, well, it depends. Because every path has a cost, right? COD helps you quantify the cost of the delay itself, but you also have to weigh that against the potential cost of rushing, maybe introducing bugs, compromising quality, building something that doesn't quite meet the mission need down the road. That has a cost too.
That old saying, better is the enemy of done, kind of comes to mind here. Sometimes delaying forever to get it perfect is actually the wrong move.
Absolutely. And COD helps make the cost of that particular delay clearer. And the sources also really stressed how important clear communication is through all of this. Whatever trade-offs you end up making, maybe you prioritize speed using COD, maybe you prioritize quality, being open and transparent about potential delays and what the impacts might be is just crucial.
It all feeds back into making better, more informed decisions. Okay, let's zoom out a bit and just quickly recap what we've unpacked today.
Sure. We started off defining cost of delay, basically, putting a number on the future opportunity costs of waiting, the value you don't get because something is delayed.
Right. We saw where it came from, the private sector, thinking beyond just revenue to things like cost savings, protecting revenue, avoiding future costs, and how those different COD curves help understand the urgency.
Then we dove into the really interesting challenge of applying this in the public sector, specifically looking at the Air Force, how you have to shift the definition of value from profit to military readiness.
And we saw those concrete examples from Kessel Run, how you can actually quantify things like the ongoing cost of keeping a legacy system running, or the value of finishing a feature like saving manpower hours and turn that into a COD score.
Yeah, and how that score becomes a really powerful tool for prioritizing work. It shows how delivering even small fixes quickly can prevent significant costs from piling up over time.
But we also hit that important nuance.
Hmm.
In places like the DoD, COD is a vital supplemental tool. It's data, but it's not the only decision maker. It has to be balanced with those non-monetary mission requirements.
Exactly. And we finished by touching on the estimation side of things, how critical good estimates are for code, and the interesting differences between academic theory and what the Air Force teams actually do in practice.
It's really a framework that forces you to confront the hidden costs of just not acting. So we'd encourage you, listening, to think about the decisions you face. Could be at work, a personal project, even something small. Where might thinking about the cost of delay help you see the real impact of waiting?
Yeah, I mean, if these sophisticated teams are calculating millions lost per month by delaying a system, or figuring out the weekly cost of not fixing a tiny software bug, what might be the invisible, the uncalculated costs of delay that are sort of lingering in your own projects, your goals, or maybe just that one task you keep putting off?